Good evening and welcome to Crossfire with me, Gloria Mumba Kalambo. The show comes to you every single Monday at 20 hours right here on Spring TV. Tonight we are featuring Mr. Tembo, President of the Patriots for Economic Progress, right here on Crossfire. And of course there has been a lot of talk, of course, after the country's biggest opposition political party formed government on August 12th. That happens to be the UPND. Now, who will fill up those big shoes that the UPND once wore, and exactly what does it take for one to qualify as the country's biggest opposition political party? So Mr. Tembo will be answering these and more questions, and of course later on in the program your comments, contributions will be picked through our phone lines, whose number is going to be stuck on your screen just a little bit. So feel free to just give us a call and of course give us your comments and contributions, as well as visit our Facebook page for all those comments and contributions as well. We're live on Spring TV at Spring 24 TV on Facebook, as well as of course follow the thread right through Twitter, Instagram and all your social media platforms. Mr. Tembo, good evening and welcome to Crossfire.
Good evening, Gloria, and a very good evening to the viewers out there.
All right, thank you so much for joining us once again. Let's get right into it. You appeared for the first time on the ballots in the August 12th elections.
Indeed.
How was that experience for you? How would you gauge your performance?
Well, it was a mixed kind of experience. Of course, on one hand, we were exhilarated that we appeared on the ballot, and it exposed us to what it takes really to participate in an election. In terms of the whole process, nominations, you know, trying to put together candidates and the like. On the other hand, I must say that we were very disappointed with our results, but we were not surprised. The reason we were disappointed is because we did note that in a number of areas where we had structures, we noted when you do the math, you realize that your own structures did not vote for you. And the reason we were not surprised is because we knew that the 2021 race was a two-horse race, just like the 2016 and the 2015 race. So the results did not surprise us, but we were disappointed in specific areas. So that's the long and short of it.
A two-way horse, as you've rightly put it, but then why then did you participate if you knew that there was really no chance for you to form government?
We needed the exposure, we needed the experience, because you know, you don't just participate because you are confident you win an election. You need to start from somewhere. I don't think there's anybody who won an election on first attempt. They had to participate at various levels. Speaking about myself, I've never been in the political arena. I've never really stood at any other level. And the people of this country did not know about Tembo until I appeared on the ballot. So you needed that introductory appearance, so to say, before you can launch in the big bid now in 2026.
Don't you think that vying for the country's biggest position, plot one, was a bit too ambitious? I mean, you'd have gone for any other position. There's members of parliament, there's mayoral candidates. We did see, of course, for example, Mr. Tayali stand for mayoral candidate and the such. Don't you think that should have been a safer route to take for yourself?
Not necessarily, because for me, when I look at what I want to do for Zambia, it is something I can only do as Republican president. It is something that I cannot achieve as member of parliament or minister or any other capacity. I can only achieve my vision for this country as a Republican president, and that is the reason why I'm vying for the position of Republican president.
All right, very interesting. Now, of course, you have been one of, if not the only strongest critic of President Hakainde Hichilema and his administration so far in just their 2 weeks of being in government. Before we get to that particular part, what do you make of President Hichilema's victory in the just ended polls?
I think it was well deserved. The extent of a victory was surprising to many, of course. We thought it would be a tight race between the UPND and the Patriotic Front, given the fact that the PF had dominated the campaign space under the disguise of the Public Order Act and the COVID guidelines, of course. So we were surprised by the extent of the margin. And to me, it just shows the extent to which the Zambian people were fed up of the Patriotic Front government. To me, that did not necessarily reflect the extent of love the Zambian people have for the UPND.
I mean, why not? They would have voted for you or anybody else, but they picked President Hichilema.
Yeah, in my view, the reason the Zambian people bet on Hakainde is because they felt that he's the one who was closest to beating Edgar Lungu. If they couldn't bet on me because I was far away.
They didn't know you.
They didn't know me to start with. They couldn't bet on a lot of other people because they felt those people were far-fetched. But Mr. Hichilema, based on the margins which were there in 2015 and 2016, a lot of people felt that he was a safe bet. And for sure, it turned out to be a safe bet as a tool or as a vehicle of removing the Patriotic Front. So that's a long and short of it, really.
All right. So now, I mean, it's only been 2 weeks since the inauguration of President Hakainde Hichilema. Of course, a lot is needed for the dust to settle when it comes to a government or a party taking over government from another. And of course, you have been the highest or the hardest critic of President Hichilema in the past 2 weeks. Do you think that it's fair, really, to criticize him in only 2 weeks of being president of the nation?
You know, I don't see it as criticism. I see it as advice. Yes. If you see the way our statements are couched, we advise him only what he's supposed to do and what he's not supposed to do. And whether he takes our advice or not is entirely up to him. But our job as opposition is to advise the ruling party, the government of the day.
When you say, not to cut you short, but when you say advice, really, what is it that you're talking about? Because it comes out more like criticism than it is of an advice.
It depends on one's mindset. If someone has a positive mindset, they'll see it as advice. If someone has a negative mindset, they'll see it as criticism. And for the ruling party, in my view, for them to prosper, for them to succeed, they need to have a positive mind. They need to really look at what people say as something they can learn from. Take, for instance, this issue of the president appointing Mr. Fano Siandenge as Deputy Inspector General of Police for special duties. We, you know, it's in public domain. It's on record that Mr. Siandenge was a wanted person. He was on the run for some time since 2016, for 5 years. And at some time, the Zambia police even raided his farm in Karomo. And subsequent to that, the next time we saw him was when he was being sworn in at State House as Deputy Inspector General of Police. And we know that there are pending charges before the Magistrates Court at Lusaka Magistrates Court. And we advise the president to say, look, we understand where you're coming from. You feel that the charges against Mr. Siandenge were politically motivated. If you ask me, I also feel the same. But there is a procedure to be followed in dropping these charges. This person has to appear before the court, and the state has to withdraw the charges, formally withdraw the charges. You cannot just sit under a tree somewhere with this person simply because you are the president and you tell this person that don't worry about the charges. We need to respect the criminal justice system. We cannot bend the criminal justice system just to accommodate 1 or 2 people, because by so doing, we'll be destroying our country. So we advise the president to follow those procedures. And in my view, our advice was couched in a very civil manner. We did not condemn him. We did not say anything that he would feel hate about. We just advised him to say, the route you have taken on this matter is a wrong route. Do the right thing. So unless someone has a negative mindset and they don't want to be, you know, to be guided, they don't want to be corrected on anything, that's when they would see it as criticism. Otherwise, for all intents and purposes, it is advice.
Also, another point that you've criticized the president on, or advised, as you love to call it, is the appointment of his full cabinet, and of course also the anticipation that the country is currently in, despite his assurance and the alliance and the party's assurance time and time again to say, look, he needs to make the right decision in appointing these individuals that are going to represent him in various cabinet positions. Do you think still that your advice has been fair enough on the president?
Because I think it's just a matter of holding the president accountable to the promises and the perception he created prior to the elections. The perception that President Hichilema gave the Zambian people is that this country is in dire straits and it needed intervention like ASAP. You understand? That is why he was making those commitments to say, when I'm sworn in, by this time I'd have done that, by that time I'd have done that. Because of the impression he was giving that the country is under dire straits and that you need immediate intervention.
Of course.
So now, coming from that background of his election, promises and speeches, then he wins the election and is in power. And then he starts taking forever to form cabinet. That's contradictory because he's supposed to walk the talk. If the country is in distress and it needed intervention immediately, then when he formed government, he was supposed to appoint his cabinet within a few days. You understand? And at the beginning, we were the only ones who were saying the president is taking forever to form his cabinet, and it's a source of concern. But subsequently, like right now, I feel that based on what I've been able to monitor in the media, I think almost half of the citizens are expressing concern on the delay in forming cabinet. So these are issues of consistency. If you are going to be a credible leader, you need to walk the talk. If you set a tone to say we are in dire straits and we need to do things ASAP, then walk with that tone both before elections and after elections. Don't make a U-turn after elections and start justifying to say, no, I'm meticulous, I'm what. I mean, a cabinet is something that you can put together today, and then 2 weeks later, after some information comes to light, you can always reshuffle it. But it's not something that is cast in stone and concrete. Yes.
But don't you think then that would put your last example, your last point, and him maybe forming cabinet today and then 2 weeks, 3 weeks later he decides to change? Don't you think that that would put him in a very awkward position?
Of course, that's an extreme example.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that even if you're going to be meticulous, remember that as a main opposition, it was his duty and responsibility to make sure he had a shadow cabinet. You understand? And for us, even when we were in opposition and we were competing to be elected, we used to point out to say, look, the UPND might be a bigger party than us, but we feel they are not ready to govern this country. And for sure, it has turned out as such.
And you're judging them in 2 weeks, Mr.
Because
Tembo?
to start with, they didn't have a shadow cabinet. They were supposed to have formed the cabinet not after winning elections, but the moment they became main opposition. And they became main opposition in 2011. So they had 10 years to constitute their cabinet. You understand? So what was supposed to happen is that after being sworn in, they were simply supposed to remove cobwebs from that readily constituted cabinet and then announce it. They were not supposed to start from scratch forming a cabinet if they are as competent as they try to give an impression that they are.
So you're not confident that the UPNDs are competent as they say they are?
I have my doubts, Gloria. I have my very strong doubts. But I wouldn't want to...
In 2 weeks, you've had your doubts.
Yes.
I really want to be very realistic about this. In 2 weeks, you've had your doubts.
I'll tell you something. Those doubts did not arise after they were elected into office. Those doubts arose way back when they were still in opposition. Because there are certain things that an opposition, a main opposition political party, is supposed to do, which in my view, they failed to do. You understand? Take, for instance, the issue of the national debt. The PF, when they won the election in 2011, they were excited. They were contracting debt here, contracting debt there. And the UPND, as main opposition political party, were mute about it until around 2016, when we had accumulated so much debt. And then that's when they started talking and said, no, this debt is not sustainable. But it was too late. We had already contracted that debt. And our view is that if the UPND had hit the ground running by providing checks and balances to the PF government in 2011, immediately the PF government was sworn into office, we would not have had this debt situation because people's awareness would have been raised. That's the purpose of opposition, to raise awareness of the public, to say, look, there is this big national issue. Can we address it? And then the government starts paying attention and say, oh, there's this issue, let's address it. But if you're quiet, if you sleep on your job as the opposition, then it is to the disadvantage of the nation and the citizens at large. So for us, we don't want to fall in the same trap that the UPND fell in, by sleeping on the job. And then when things get worse now, when there is visible damage to the nation, that's when we say, these people have caused this damage. That would be too late.
But Mr. Tembo, you were also in opposition. PIP was in opposition as the former ruling party, the PF, were also governing this country.
We were not there in 2011.
Not 2011, but after 2016, of course, when government was, the PF again returned the seat.
At that time,
you were in opposition.
Yes, at that time we did our job. We did not only condemn what the PF was doing, but we went further by developing and presenting alternative national budgets to tell them how they were supposed to run the country in terms of economically, what policies they were supposed to put in place, what allocations of amounts of expenditure they were supposed to put to which sector. We are the only opposition political party in the history of this country to develop and present alternative national budgets. So had the Zambian people voted for us on the 12th of August, we would not have struggled whether to formulate the first budget or to constitute a cabinet, because we've had a shadow cabinet from the time that we were registered as a political party. So we have always done our job. And we're on top of things. And even when the Zambian people eventually give us a mandate, whenever that is going to be, to run the affairs of this country, you can be rest assured, Gloria, that we're going to hit the ground running. We are not going to start defending ourselves and justifying why we can't constitute a cabinet. We are not going to do that.
All right, but let me take you back again. I mean, you just clearly put it. You were in opposition the time that things, as many citizens love to call it, were going bad for this country. What did you do? And did your efforts really yield any results? Because you just criticized the opposition now ruling UPND on one point, in that they failed to offer checks and balances, which is something you're trying to do now.
Yes, yes.
What did that do really for the country?
So for us, remember we were formed in 2017 as a political party. And when we were formed, we did advise the PF government on a number of policies on how to manage the economy. And I'm happy to mention that they adopted about 3 or 4 of those policies. The ones I can remember off the top of my head is we told the PF government to say, look, the reason why we cannot support the dollar is because the mines who sell our copper do not repatriate the dollars that they sell back into the country. They'll sell 100 million. That 100 million goes to their head office in Canada or in Brazil or in India. And then they only bring back 5 million, which they convert into kwacha to pay salaries and a few other expenses. So we have a huge demand for foreign currency to import fuel, to do this, to do that, but then the supply is not consistently there. So come up with a policy, introduce a policy to compel these people to repatriate the full proceeds of the copper sales. And then when they make a profit at the end of the year and declare a dividend, they can repatriate whatever amount they want to repatriate. And to a large extent, the PF implemented that by compelling the mines to basically ensure that they settle their obligations in US dollars as opposed to kwacha. That meant that instead of the mines keeping their money and converting it into kwacha and creating a greater demand for the currency, thereby making the kwacha depreciate, they are compelled to pay directly in forex. And that is what, towards the end of the PF regime, helped to stabilize the kwacha to a large extent. So yes, it stabilized reasonably. And also we advised the PF government to say, look, the issue of gambling is becoming a big problem across the country. There's a lot of gambling among our people, and gambling is addictive, just like smoking cigarettes, just as drinking beer. It is addictive. So you need to come up with interventions which would protect our people from gambling. And one of the ways is to increase the tax. Come up with a gross tax on gambling winnings, a gross tax on the turnover for gambling, so that these gambling companies can pay a significant amount of money in terms of tax compared to an ordinary company, and that money can be used to try and provide psychosocial counseling to our people who are addicted to gambling and things like that. And in the 2020 budget, budget, the Minister of Finance actually announced that policy. So we are happy. Those are two of the 4 or 5 policies which the PF government adopted from our alternative budgets. So we are happy that, you know, we are just not in the business of condemning. We are in the business of providing solutions as well, because we love this country, Gloria. We love this country. We are patriotic to the Republic of Zambia. Yes.
Very interesting point. Let me take you back to your point of perception and timing. You mentioned earlier that the president gave this perception that he was ready to govern the country in your own wording. Now, I want to take you back to this. Really, it's like I mentioned earlier, realistically speaking, it's been 2 weeks since the president was inaugurated, and of course now being introduced to the actual reality of what or where the country stands in terms of debt, in terms of where of course every sector falls when it comes to how it's actually faring, or we're actually faring as a country. Is that timed enough? Your criticism, your hard-on criticism.
So the point I've been trying to drive home, Gloria, is that he was supposed to prepare even way before. Take this example. If you are a farmer, right, you're not going to wait for the rains to fall before you start clearing the field.
Quite right.
Let me just finish. Before you start clearing the field, before you start looking for fertilizer, before you start looking for seeds, you're not going to wait for the rains to fall first, isn't it? Because you know that the rains might fall anytime within this period. You understand? So you prepare in advance. You clear the field, you put aside your grain, you put aside your fertilizer. The moment the rains fall, you just go ahead and start planting. You understand? So the situation we have here with President Hichilema is one whereby he did not prepare for the cultivating season. He waited for the rains to fall first, and then he's now scampering all over the place looking for seeds, trying to clear the land. That's been disorganized. And if you are really going to deliver this country to the development that it deserves, then you need to be an organized president. You cannot afford to be as disorganized as President Hakainde Hichilema has demonstrated in the past 2 weeks.
When you say disorganized, what do you mean, really? What can you point at as disorganized? For example, he mentioned that when he forms or when he wins, the kwacha would drop. The kwacha to dollar rate is going to drop, and of course significantly we have seen a very huge appreciation in the currency. That appreciation
happened way before he was inaugurated. So
don't you think it has to do with investor confidence in the new president?
Not really, not really. If he wants to really show any significant successes that he would have scored, he needs to drop it further from the 16 where it is, push it to 14.
But there is a drop that the PF government you advised really failed to bring to this country. Don't you think that then largely it has to do with his election as president?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Really? Why is that?
Yeah. Because the kwacha started dropping a month before elections. It started dropping a month before election. I'll tell you why the kwacha dropped. The number one reason is because government took over KCM. And as a result of taking over KCM, it meant that as opposed to the time when KCM was owned by those Indian guys, whereby when they sell the copper, the gross proceeds would go to India. This time around, since KCM was controlled by Zambia, when the copper is sold, the money would come to Zambia and go into Zambian banks. You understand? That's I would say 90% of the reason why the kwacha started appreciating in the past couple of months. Because there was a ready supply of forex. And then second reason is because of the $1.3 billion which the International Monetary Fund gave us as a gift.
Remember, they only gave this to us in the last week before the election.
In the form of special drawing rights. But they announced that about three months earlier. So when you make an announcement and say, we're going to give you this amount, then immediately the currency starts moving, even before the amount reflects in the Bank of Zambia accounts, because people know that the International Monetary Fund is a reputable organization. If they say they're going to give us $1.3 billion on the 24th of August, then for sure they will not default on that promise. They will give us $1.3 billion on the 24th of August.
But
so those are the two main reasons.
Realistically speaking, really, from the time that President Hichilema was announced as a Republican president or winner of the election, really, don't you think there has been a drastic appreciation in the kwacha?
To a large extent, after President Hichilema was inaugurated as the 7th president, he actually undermined the strength of the kwacha and caused destabilization in investor confidence.
How is
because of the utterances that he made when he spoke to the BBC, the BBC's Rukwesa Burak, whereby he painted a very gloomy picture about the country. He told the BBC to say there's a lot of theft going on, even up to now, of cash and this and that in the treasury, and there's a lot of hidden debt, debt that was not disclosed by the previous government. But President Hichilema was challenged by the former Minister of Finance, Honorable Waryangandu, to say, you are alleging that I was hiding debt when I was in office. Can you tell the nation the list of the debtors, or rather the list of the creditors that I was hiding, and how much is owed to each one of them? And you know what President Hichilema said? He said that I'll reveal that information after the external auditors complete their audit.
Of course, as it should.
So if you don't have complete information, if you don't have complete information on your fingertips, then why should you go out there and make these wild allegations? Why should you go out there and taint somebody's name? Because by saying that, he was essentially saying that Honorable Waryangandu is a crook. He's a crook who was hiding debt on behalf of government. And you must remember, Gloria, that right now, Honorable Waryangandu is a former cabinet minister, and he needs to find something to do. He needs to find a job so that he can feed his family. So how then is he going to find a job if he has been painted black by the president as someone who is a crook, someone who was hiding creditors when he was finance minister? And yet the president does not have any evidence to that effect.
But you know, is it safe to say the president has no evidence to that effect? I mean,
if he had evidence when he was challenged, he was going to present that evidence. I'm an auditor by profession. I've been an auditor for decades. You cannot make an allegation without evidence. You need evidence.
He's the head of state,
yes.
Mr. Tembo. Of course,
he's the head of state. We know that you cannot sue him for defamation. He's got immunity. But you must remember, Gloria, that a head of state is someone who is very powerful. But with that power should come responsibility. You need to flex your power in a responsible manner. You should not abuse your power. You should not disadvantage, powerless citizens simply because you've got the power. You understand? So, in my view, President Hakainde Hichilema acted in a very irresponsible manner when he had that interview with the British Broadcasting Corporation.
By telling them that the country is in the worst state that we thought it was?
By saying that the former government was hiding debt. Yes, and yet he couldn't disclose the list of creditors. Because even the BBC journalist challenged him to say, can you give us a list of those creditors? He couldn't say. He further went on to say, there is theft going on even right now. It's like washing dirty linen in public. The president now is our father of the nation. He needs to protect and safeguard the Republic of Zambia. The Republic of Zambia is his baby. You understand? You cannot go out there to the international world and paint the country black and say there's even theft going on right now.
But your own government, bad as the president, Mr. Tembo.
That is something he is supposed to address. He's supposed to have a meeting with the law enforcement agencies, the Drug Enforcement Commission, the Zambia Police Service, the Anti-Corruption Commission. He has a meeting with them at State House and he tells them, look, there's theft going on even at the moment. These are the areas where the theft is taking place. Can you quickly intervene, you investigate and arrest these people so that we prosecute them and we stop the theft? That is something you do internally. That is not something you go to the BBC about and tell the entire world about. By so doing, you are acting in an immature manner. You are not acting like a responsible Republican president. And when we raise these issues, people say it's too early. It can never be too early for you to do the right thing. The president has to learn to do the right thing from the word go. That is our argument.
All right, let's drop that particular conversation and move on to your Facebook posts. I mean, about 3 days ago, you did share a post on Facebook referring to what you called a cow mentality. What exactly did you mean? If I can, let me just read that post out just to refresh your mind and get you clearly as you respond to that. You said, this was 3 days ago, it said, it is ironic that people who spent 23 years criticizing presidents, Chiluba, Mwanawasa, Rupia, Sata, and Lungu today do not want their government to be criticized when they do something wrong. All of a sudden, they think they can intimidate people into submission. You went on to say they fail to respond with sound arguments. All that they have to offer is insults and innuendos. Then you went on again to say this cow mentality should end in 2026. What did you mean by cow mentality? I mean, for many people, this is a very tribal remark. This is the feedback we've been getting. I mean, really, what did you mean?
You must
cow
understand.
mentality.
You must understand, Gloria. First of all, I want to say that I have a social media team which manages all our social media platforms. We've got 6 social media platforms, and of course, at the end of the day, even if these posts are made by my media team, I take full responsibility because they are done under the party page. But with regard to that statement, in fact, I received a direct complaint with regard to the post, and I reviewed the post because sometimes I advise my media team to either amend the post or delete it completely if I feel that that post is not appropriate. So I reviewed that particular post, and I did not find anything wrong with it because, you know, the challenge we have in this country is that, especially at this particular time, is that people are trying to, instead of making an argument on its own merits and demerits, people are trying to shut you up by quickly labeling you a tribalist. You understand? It's fashionable. When you try to argue a certain fact, people will just shut you up by saying you're being a tribalist. So when you look at the reference, that particular reference, it does not refer to any particular tribe. I mean, what would be the motivation to refer to any particular tribe? If you go to the eastern province of Zambia, the Ngoni people, I'm Ngoni by tribe myself, the Ngoni people, from time immemorial, from the time we were in South Africa, we've been known to keep a lot of cows. So why should it all of a sudden mean that whenever you talk about a cow, then it's just with regard to a particular area? It shouldn't be like that.
Mr. Tembo.
So the moment you do that, then you are essentially trying to gag people so that they cannot talk about anything whatsoever. Otherwise, if they do, then they are labeled as tribalists. I've never been a tribalist myself, and I'll never be.
Before we get to that point, what you're telling me now is that you did not make this post, but your media team.
Of course.
Don't you think then it is irresponsible for anyone not to check what their team is going to post?
But you're missing the point I made earlier. Did you get my earlier point? My earlier point was that the moment that post was made, I received a direct complaint, and I reviewed the post. I reviewed the post. Many a time I would review posts which are made, and if I find them inappropriate, I would advise my media team to either amend them or delete them completely. So I reviewed that particular post. I did not find anything wrong with it. So I told my media team to leave it as it is.
So the people you're referring to here, who are you referring to? 23 years criticize. I really want to get it from you yourself, seeing as you reviewed the post and you see nothing and you find nothing wrong with it. 23 years criticizing presidents. You mentioned the president that were criticized. All of a sudden, they don't want to be criticized. And you go on to call this a cow mentality. What did you mean, or what did your media team explain to you that they meant? What was the main point?
They meant the intolerance which is there at the moment. You know, we are facing so much intolerance. You know, when you go out there, especially in the social media space, when you look at the insults that people pile on you just for providing checks and balances, you would get the feeling that perhaps these people, the UPND, actually lost the election. You wouldn't really realize that these people won the election because they have so much bitterness to anybody who wants to speak contrary to the views of their party. And what we're saying is that, look, you people, when you were in opposition, for instance, when Sata was president, Hakainde Hichilema was calling Sata Chimbwi no plan. He was referring to Sata as Chimbwi. You know what a Chimbwi is? It's a hyena. A hyena without a plan. You understand? That is what Hakainde Hichilema, when he was in opposition, was referring to Sata. We are not referring to Mr. Hakainde Hichilema with any of those disparaging terms.
But
every time, listen, every time we refer to him as president. We give him his title, which is due to him. So what we're saying is that, look, you people, when you were in opposition, starting from the time you were opposing the Frederick Chiluba, and
when you say you people,
let me finish.
Yeah, as you explained.
When you were opposing Frederick Chiluba, when you were opposing Levi Mwanawasa, when you were opposing Lupia Banda, when you were opposing Michael Sata, then Edgar Lungu, you know, people were not this bitter to you. People were not insulting you the way you are trying to insult us merely for providing checks and balances. So can you please relax? Let us not behave in an unreasonable manner like animals. You understand? Because only animals behave in an unreasonable manner. Human beings are supposed to behave in a reasonable manner. And an example of an animal is a cow. You understand?
Of all animals. I mean, there was the hyena that was picked, as history served us.
I would have found the reference to a hyena more offensive than a cow. A cow
really,
is better, yeah.
You don't at any point think this is tribal?
It's not. Not at all. Yes.
All right, so...
Unless you want to stretch the idea of tribal.
I mean, the country has been through so much bitterness and
That's the whole idea. That's the whole idea. So our expectation is that as we provide our checks and balances, these people would respond to us with sound arguments. When we argue about something, if we say we are against the International Monetary Fund coming to Zambia and providing a loan, if you read our long article, there is no insult there. There's just civil arguments. But when you look at the responses from the UPND, they will insult us, insult our mothers, insult our daughters. So what we are saying is that you UPND people, why are you so bitter? Why are you so bitter as if you lost the election? When you won the election with a landslide, you're supposed to be happy people, such that when we post something which we are challenging you about, you're supposed to respond with reasonable arguments, free of insults. You understand? That is what we are trying to say.
All right. So there's been talk, really, from some sections of society stating that your criticism or checks and balances, as you love to call them, or advice, I like how you put it, your advice come from a point of frustration, seeing as you left the UPND alliance, and the alliance has managed to usher in a president, really, which, of course, President Hakainde Hichilema into office. Is this the case? Is this advice, is this criticism
not at all.
coming from a point of frustration?
Not at all. When you look at the other route, compared to the route we took to be on the ballot, if we had taken the other route and we were part of this so-called alliance, right now we would have been sitting there waiting for a job from the president. You understand? So a job would be something that is valuable to someone who doesn't have a job. You understand? If you don't have a job and someone offers you a job, whether it's whatever, it's valuable to you because you don't have a job. But I've got a job and I'm very happy with the job I have. I've been running my own business since I was 24 years old. That's 17 years ago. I'm 41 years old now. I run an audit firm, international firm, so I'm very happy. It feeds me, it feeds my family. I've got no intentions of getting a formal job with the government, whether as an MD somewhere or as a minister. I've got no intentions or desire to get that. You understand? So I cannot be frustrated, Gloria. I cannot be frustrated. How can I be frustrated when I'm not in need of a job?
I mean, you went in this alliance as you respond. Initially, you did go into the alliance.
Yeah, but we left the alliance.
Why?
Why we left the alliance? You know, when we went into the alliance, we had agreed whether expressly or impliedly on certain things. And one of the key things that was paramount to us was for us to maintain our individuality as a political party. Because me, when I brought together a couple of people to form the Patriots for Economic Progress, it was not a right decision. It wasn't something like you are seated under a tree one day and then you say, guys, let's form a party, let's go. No. It was something that I thought about and I planned about over a period of almost 10 years to say, I want to participate in the governance of the nation, and either by forming a political party or joining one of the existing political parties. And when the time came, I looked at the main political parties which were there. That was the Patriotic Front and the UPND. I took time to assess them over a year, to assess each one of them, what they stood for, how much internal democracy they had in each organization. And then finally, I came to the conclusion that I can neither join any of these two political parties, the PF or the UPND. We'll start something from scratch, because the vision we have for this country cannot be delivered using the UPND vehicle or the PF vehicle. That is the conclusion that I came up with. So after forming the Patriots for Economic Progress, the last thing I want to hear from anybody is to say, dissolve your party and come under us. Because if I wanted to come under you, I would never have started the Patriots for Economic Progress in the first place. I would have come directly to you, I would have joined you, I would have been in your National Management Committee or your Central Committee in the case of the PF, and I would have been among you guys. But I didn't do that for a reason. So when we were in the alliance, when we said, okay, I think it's time to come up with an electoral pact in terms of who is going to field candidates where, we were advised to say we will have to field candidates under the UPND, like what happened in the last election. So we said that amounts to us dissolving our party, because when we field candidates under the UPND, it means that when those candidates win an election, they will become UPND MPs and councillors. They will not become MPs and councillors. So we're effectively dissolving our party. And on that basis, we are excusing ourselves. We left on very amicable terms. And even when I was in the alliance, I did my part. No one can say I didn't do a proper job. I was a chairperson for media. Essentially the spokesperson of the entire alliance. I was a chairperson of the finance committee. So anybody who understands politics knows that politics is about money and media. So if you are running both portfolios, it just shows how competent you are. So we left the alliance on a very good note. I said bye to my colleagues, and right now I'm in a very happy place. Despite our poor performance in the last election, we'll pick the crumbs up and we'll forge forward. So I'm very, very happy where I am.
Don't you think that really the poor performance, coupled with the president now HH winning, your poor performance, could be some level of frustration within you, could have caused or stirred up some frustration within you?
No, that don't. Look at it this way, Gloria. I'm still a young man. I'm only 41 years old. Mr. Hakainde Hichilema is 59 years old. Is 18 years my senior. So what the president achieves, someone who is 18 years my senior, what they achieve, I mean, I wouldn't break my back over it, because by the time I reach their age, chances are that I would have long achieved what they've achieved. You understand? So there's nothing to be frustrated about. I'm vibrant, I'm young, and I've got a whole bright future ahead of me.
All right.
Yes.
You're watching Crossfire. The lines are officially open. The numbers are on your screen. Give us a call. Let us know where you're watching us from and exactly what your comments and contributions are on tonight's topic of discussion. Of course, we are discussing opposition political parties. And of course, I have with me tonight Mr. Tembo of the Patriots for Economic Progress right here in studio. If you have any questions, contributions, comments, please feel free to call us in and let us know what your thoughts are on that particular one. But we do have somebody on the line. Hello, good evening and welcome to Crossfire. Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening. All right, that seems to be a bad connection. But anyway, as you keep on trying to reach us in studio, remember the numbers are actually on your screen at this particular moment. Mr. Tembo, I have one more question for you. Let's talk. We spoke earlier about the alliance and, of course, your criticism on the UPND alliance. Rather the president in himself, Mr. Hichilema. Let's say today he decided...
not criticism.
Advice, as you love to call it. Today he decides, look, Mr. Tembo, you have offered very good checks and balances. Because I have well thought my process and peakingness of who is going to be under my cabinet, I would like you to be part of my cabinet. Would you agree?
No.
Why?
I would not.
You want to change the country. You have a vision for the country. Wouldn't you agree to be in President Hichilema's cabinet?
I've previously declined a cabinet appointment. And the whole idea, Gloria, is that from my point of view, I would only want to serve in public service if I'm able to make a difference. So if I'm going to be a minister in a particular government, which is not my government, then I can only be a minister in that government if my boss, who is the president, is someone who is able to listen to advice, someone that will allow you to really be a factor in terms of trying to drive the policy direction of that particular ministry of the country. When you look at the leadership style of the former president, Mr. Edgar Lungu, and you look at the leadership style of the current president, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, there's not much difference.
How so? It's been 2 weeks.
Yes.
I like how you've noticed all this in 2 weeks,
Yes,
Tembo,
yes.
really, how?
You know, when you talk about the issue of democracy, I always tell people to say, democracy is not like a jacket, which you wear in the morning when it's cold, and then you can take off in the afternoon when it gets hotter. You understand? Democracy is a way of life, the way you do things. So you can tell the nature, the character of someone, of a leader, by how they run their political party, the extent of internal democracy in their respective political party. If you look at the Patriotic Front as an organization, throughout its existence, it was never a democratic institution. When you look at the UPND, throughout its existence, it has never been a democratic institution. So, if you are coming let me just finish. If you are coming from an undemocratic institution, such as the PF or the UPND, and you are the president, and now you are Republican president, there is no way that you can suddenly become democratic, because it's not in your nature. It's not in your nature. So when I look at President Hakainde Hichilema, I know he's not a democratic person. He's not someone who will give you leeway to really say, can you drive the policy direction of this matter? He'll figure out something based on where he meets other people, some other advisors, and come and put it on your desk as Minister of Finance and say, implement this. Take, for instance, this IMF idea. I don't think that the IMF idea was Dr. Msokotwane's idea. It was President Hakainde Hichilema's idea from the word go. When he was inaugurated as Republican president, he simply shoved the Minister of Finance to say, start implementing this.
But I mean, how sure can you be? But anyway,
I know that
before we
Gloria,
get into that.
Because such a major national policy decision should never have been made without a full cabinet. Because remember, the decision-making structure of our country in terms of governance is that when an idea or a reform has to come from a minister, then it is tabled before cabinet and debated. When it is adopted,
he's the visionary.
When it is adopted, then it goes out there and is announced to the public. But in this particular case, President Hichilema announced the decision to put Zambia on an IMF package before that idea was tabled before a full cabinet, to get the input of other cabinet members. Even if you are the vision carrier, it doesn't mean that you are going to run a one-man show in terms of running government. You need to respect the institutions of governance that are there.
Let's get to the cause now. Good evening and welcome to Crossfire. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Crossfire. All right, the numbers you're dialing are on your screen. We seem to have lost that particular call. Give us a call and let us know where you're calling us from and what your comment and contribution is. Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening, sir. We can hear you. Your names and where you're calling us from. Hello? Yes, please go ahead with your comment and contribution. We can hear you. Hello? Okay, your line here, Nusili clear, Maningi Tizai dropping up. Please call us in and let us know what your comments and contributions are in this particular discussion. And just a caution and a reminder as you call us in, remember to turn your phone or your TV set volume down to 0 so we don't get any feedback and we're able to communicate to you loud and clear. Hello, good evening and welcome to Crossfire. Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening. Yes, sir. Please go ahead with your comment and contribution. I'm correct, more petition.
no Pakistan para. Then after then Tembo more plan. That would say so. I'm thinking that it's too late for him to start criticizing the president. But we like the what is doing the checks and balances.
All right.
Too early.
All right. Thank you so much for that contribution. We'll pick up more calls before we get to Mr. Tembo reacting to that. Ndola says it's too soon for you to begin to criticize. And this is a point that many people have been raising, I suppose, even in your ears, to say, look, it's only been 2 weeks. Let the man settle and let him give him some time to just breathe and sit in that chair and be able to make the right decisions. Before you come in with your reaction, let's pick up another call. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Crossfire.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, your name and where you're calling us from.
Yeah, I'm calling from Lusaka.
Sorry? Nomba Buiche, please go ahead with your comment and contribution or contribution.
Thank you very much. Good evening,
Good evening, sir.
Surely I have been following your discussions, your posting on social media. I am not a politician, but I follow politics as my hobby. You are doing a commendable job from my point of view. The thing is fair to understand this, not you started. We want to give time to our leaders in positions until they make mistakes which are fatal and probably even be very difficult to correct. So starting at the same time with the governing political party at the moment, and especially the president of our president at the moment, it's very important. So what we're doing is very correct. Just persevere. We know there is no spiritual because we just voted for President that we so much love him and we don't want him to be different because I can assure you the direction of President is very crucial and important and very sure we will stand up. And he counts themselves as the one of you. At the moment, this is the problem we have in this country. Political parties just resurface at the time when there are elections. We need such people. Continue. We wish you well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Nomba Wiche, if I got your name correctly. All right. The numbers you're dialing are on your screen. Let us know what your name is, where you're calling us from, as well as your contribution, comment, question, or whatever it is that you would like to say on tonight's program. Of course, remember we're featuring PEP President, who has been a strong critic or advisor, as he loves to call himself, of President Hakainde Hichilema in his 2 weeks of being in government or being in a leadership position such as that of President of the entire nation. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Crossfire.
Hello, Mwibon.
Bwino muli bwanji, ndimwe bandani mututumira ku tifoni.
David tumira wambeni from Lusaka.
At bandani zina?
David.
Yes, but David.
Our president Jackson Tembo, mwewa kambira, vintu kama vanzeru budget. It's just too early to musta condemn. My politics is not all about talking, but it's just too early for you to be talking about the cabinet. It's still an issue. Let him take time. That's why he's taking time. He doesn't want to make mistakes.
All right.
So I show now has been a big
All right, Zikomo. All right, that was David from within Lusaka. I know Mr. Tembo is itching to respond to those comments, but before we do that, of course, let's try and pick up one more call, and then we can get to Mr. Tembo responding to about the to the 3 or 4 comments that we've had so far on the show. The number is on your screen. Give us a call and let us know where you're calling us from, as well as your comment contribution. And remember to switch off your or to turn your volume down to 0 as you call us in to avoid any feedback, and so we may be able to speak to you loud and clear. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Crossfire. Hello. Please turn the volume down to 0 on your gadget or TV set.
Can from Chirondo. My name is Ambusungawantu.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead with your comment.
I just want to differ with President Sean Tembo. President Sean Tembo, good evening, Mr. Zero.
He says good evening.
Well,
good evening.
Yeah, thank you so much. Mr. Tembo is alleging that the president bulldozed the IMF package. If my record serves me right, the previous government had already engaged the IMF regarding the bailout. So that is a lie and is misleading the masses. So that statement there where he says the president bulldozed the IMF package, it's a lie. And secondly, there's no way cabinet would sit when he only chose one minister of finance. And the reason why he went for a minister of finance is because it said the economy was bleeding. So you go, first of all, you suture a bleeding wound. And it's an auditor there. It's supposed to see all those things before you start even appointing officers. I don't know, that is the reason why probably people never bought his idea, and that is the reason why he was just finding zeros in most of these constituencies. I sympathize with him. You know, you must tone down Mr. Tembo and face the realities. Don't be too quick, as a good leader, don't be too quick to start condemning and exposing yourself. First of all, you analyze the situation, it's so now you can react. You don't, from the way you go, you start condemning. That is not leadership. I submit, Madam Gloria. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Who appointed, first of all, who appointed the Sylvia Kula? Former President Lungu appointed the Sylvia Kula on the day of his inauguration. So where was he? Why didn't he condemn him? It was the reason why he's enjoying, because the president said, you are free now, you can do anything. And that is, now we are in new zone. No wonder he's talking like this. He was hammered by PF Kandan. I sympathize with him. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Chirundu there, coming in from all parts of the country. Really, we've had a number of calls from a number of towns, but a number of points have been made. Some sympathizing with you, others condemning you, generally saying too soon to critic or to advise. Let the man settle.
Yeah, I think from our point of view, we are fully aware that any activity we do as a party will not reach consensus support among the people. Others will feel that what we are doing is not the right thing. Others will feel it's the right thing. Of course, our supporters will feel it's the right thing. Those who support other political parties like the UPND will feel it's not the right thing. So we respect that. I think the UPND should focus on discharging their mandate, which is to develop this country since they are in government. And we shall focus on our mandate, which is to provide checks and balances to them.
But don't you want them to respond?
We don't expect them to tell us on how to do our job. We shall do our job of providing checks and balances in a manner that we see fit.
So you would prefer you speak and they don't respond?
You know, when you look at the whole concept of democracy and the role of the opposition vis-a-vis the ruling party, when you provide advice to people, the way we have been providing advice to them, they are not compelled to either adopt our advice or respond to our advice, because it is their mandate to run the affairs of the nation now. When it becomes our mandate to run the affairs of the nation, then we'll do things as we please. Right now, it's their job. So when we speak, we are essentially assisting them to do things in a better way. But that is assuming they want to listen to our advice. If they don't listen to our advice, we'll still provide it so that it can be on record and the Zambian people can see that we were there to advise them, but they were too arrogant to listen to what we had to say. And when it comes to 2026 and we go to the ballot, then we shall find out at that particular time whether they still maintain their 1 million margin of win and we maintain our zeros, or the tables will be turned, depending on what the judgment of the Zambian people is going to be.
A point has been always raised from the gentleman from Chirundu, where he said that you now seem to have the liberty to speak out and offer your advice as your love.
We have always spoken.
But you were never this loud, though, Mr. Tembo, even in the PF administration. My question, though,
do you forget, Gloria, that we are the only political party that protested against the fire tender scandal on 13 occasions until we were attacked in Cairo Road. The time that
after the attack, I want to finish my question, Mr. Tembo.
Okay.
After the attack, though.
The time on the fire tender, the UPND never protested, not even a single protest. Hakainde Hichilema was tweeting. He was on Twitter.
All right, let's talk about
while
you this
we were
time
in
around.
Cairo Road.
Okay, let's talk about you this
the
time
Zambian
around.
people must put that on record.
All right.
At the time that me and my party members were in Cairo Road protesting against corruption in the PF government, Hakainde Hichilema was at his house on Twitter, tweeting.
Well enough. But my point is, we saw that after you attack,
nobody
can I
should
finish my question,
Okay,
Mr.
sure,
Tembo? Please,
sure.
let me finish my question.
Sure.
After you attack, your criticism or advice toned down when it comes to how you were offering it in the PF administration. And now that the president, the current president, now the new president, mentioned to say, look, you have the liberty. You've heard him say this. You have the liberty, even the media, criticize as much as you want to, say whatever you want to say.
There's
no one will come and close you down.
There's no liberty that we know of.
No one will come and threaten your life.
You know, from our point of view, that is mere rhetoric. Because, you know, during the PF, apart from that attack that we experienced, and we identified the people who attacked us and ABCD, and we knew who sent those people. Yeah. When we go on radio, whether it's Unza Radio or any other radio station, we criticize the PF government. They would only phone into the program and basically challenge us and write us off or whatever it is, you know, attack us in a political manner. Ever since the UPND
after they physically attacked you?
Both before and after. But after the UPND came in, the idea of the UPND is to, you know, they don't even care. They'll phone you, they'll send you messages threatening your life. So if the president says that we have liberty now, if you asked me, we did not have liberty under the PF, and we still don't have liberty at the moment. Maybe we might have liberty along the way after the president settles in, but as of now, there's no liberty that you can talk about.
But you've been very open in your speech.
We have always been. We have always been. You must remember, Gloria, that this country is our country too. It's our country too. So nobody should come and try to intimidate us and think that when we speak, they are doing us a favor. Nobody is doing us a favor. We are bona fide citizens of this republic. You must remember that.
All right. Yes. Well enough. Well enough. Before we close and come to the end of the program, let's pick up one or two calls. I know my director is screaming in my ears saying we have to conclude this particular program, but of course we might be doing Mr. Tembo an injustice to actually get to hear what the masses actually saying out there. Good evening and welcome to Crossfire.
Good evening. This is Patrick.
Your name, sir? Yes, please, sir. Go ahead with your contribution.
Yes, I just need a quick clarity from Mr. Sean Tembo. Yes, you asked him about the difference he made with regard to the parliamentary. And prior to his post area, he had posted that the UPND should just bring Tonga, should not Tonga be spoken in Lusaka. Yes, Lusaka is the national languages are known to be Tembo and Langa, or whatever the name. So, why is he refusing that thing is not in tribal if I read it after such clarification? Moreover, CCC have said the languages. So why is he troubling and where did he get that the information that he is under the own official languages? If he refuses, that is not tribal to death. So this is criticism, will be premature and realistic and pretentious. The president has to settle. He's not a president who is used to the other kind of leadership that Mr. Tembo has been exposed to PF. Just when the president has won, he said they don't win. Let the Arabs. And now you are crying out in the arena. Just take heart. You work on your popularity. Maybe you will be 2022. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Of course.
I think, you know, when you look at this social media, whatever, the UPND have created a number of pages in my name, and they are posting all sorts of things there. Then they are capturing that and then circulating it and saying, Mr. Tembo is saying this, Mr. Tembo is saying that. So when you want to confirm that this is something that has come from Mr. Tembo's page, you know our page has got more followers, you need to go there and scroll down. Everything that we post will be there forever. So if it is not on our page, just know that it is propaganda. We have received a number of these accusations, such as the one he's talking about. We did not make any such posts. Those were done by the UPND supporters trying to tarnish our name. Yes.
All right, just one more call and then we come to the close of the program. Director, just thank you so much for allowing this particular call. Hello, good evening and welcome to Crossfire. Hello, good evening and welcome to Crossfire.
Hey, good evening. My name is Mr. Shimeshe calling from Sweden and I'm following the program.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm just going to make a comment. Is it okay if I use Temba?
Don't, any language is welcome on the platform. Please feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Even from Uganda, what Mr. Tembo is doing is actually a good job because Mr. Akainde was in opposition for a long time and people can't say, Turore, let's settle in. He has already started making appointments and talking on the IMF issue. I'm a scholar for economical history, and if we look at our economical history of Zambia, what IMF did was not good. We were pushed in a corner, which ended up liquidating our assets. And then we look at the appointment of Mr. Kumbeko, Vice Guatama issues. There's no way Mr. Aka in the economist has studied. He's a businessman. You can't put Umuntu Kwetama Sandos as CEO. That's not how. Even if he has not been taken to court or anything, found guilty, you don't do that in business. And two, as a CEO of a company, promote as a CEO of Zesco or any company, and you go and start about mouthing Zesco, they will fire you on the spot. What they did was wrong. That's my point. My opinion. That's all.
All right. If I got your name correctly. All right. Director, would you like one more call? I want to push in just one more call and then we get to the close of the program, because I know that there's a number of them coming in, and of course you want to voice out and speak to Mr. Tembo and just give us your comments and your thoughts and your contributions surrounding that. Hello, good evening and welcome to Crossfire.
Hello.
Hello, good evening and welcome to Crossfire.
This is Gibson calling you from Sambatton.
Mr. Kenson, please go ahead with your comment, contribution, or question. Oh, we seem to have lost that particular one. Director, I hope you're not counting it as our last because we didn't speak to that particular caller. But anyway, of course, a call coming from Sweden there, Mr. Simushe, if I got his name correctly, agreeing with you. On your comments, and before you come in, we actually have our last call finally. Good evening and welcome to Crossfire. Yes, please go ahead with your name and where you're calling us from.
Hello, this is Chi Williamson calling you from within Lusaka.
Yes, Mr. Msonda.
Yes, I've been following the program and wonderful points that have been brought forth. My comment basically is just to the government of the day. This whole issue of appointing cabinet ministers and not knowing the time frame, I feel that's what they should work on. They should give us at least a time frame to know that by this and this time, a full cabinet will have been given. And then to Mr. Sean Tembo, kudos the fact that you're giving checks and balances. In the previous regime, there was this issue of giving the PF time. to set up when they took MMD. But now I'm a young person, and I got disappointed by the previous regime. Now that a new party is in power, they must begin work now. This is the demand from us as young youth.
All right.
They must remember that we voted them into power, and they must hit the ground running. The issue of delaying cabinet, at least they should give us a time frame of when the full cabinet will be given through.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Msonda. From within Lusaka, of course, your comments there, I'm sure your heart has settled. You've had
Gloria,
pretty good last cause and comments.
Yeah, any reasonable Zambian would agree with us. Yeah, you know, a president is a very powerful person. There's no reason why any ordinary citizen should spend their breath trying to defend their president. The president can defend themselves. What they should be doing is assisting us, who are relatively powerless, to provide checks and balances to this really powerful person. You know, the moment you, the Zambian people, start siding with a very powerful person, a president, you know, over a powerless, you know, citizen like myself, as we provide these checks and balances, what you are effectively doing is tilting the balance of power. And at the end of the day, you end up creating a monster. You end up creating a dictator. You end up creating someone who will not be amenable to advice. You understand? Yeah. So speaking for ourselves, you know, the reason we provide these checks and balances is because we love this country, and we are fully aware that there is no government in the world and there is no president in the world who would succeed without advice. It doesn't matter how brilliant they are. It doesn't matter how intelligent they are. There's no one who can succeed without advice. And that is the reason why we are giving advice to President Hakainde Hichilema, because we love him as our president and we want him to succeed. And we know, we are fully aware that when the president succeeds, the Zambian people would have succeeded. And Zambia as a country would have succeeded too. And we are going to be a shining example in the region. Everybody will be pointing to Zambia. Whenever you go out there, you flash your passport, everybody will say, you guys, your economy is doing very well, your democracy is doing very well. It will make me happy, it will make you happy, it will make each and every Zambian happy. But for us to achieve that, there is need to do certain things first. And one of those things is to provide the checks and balances that we decided to stand up and provide to the government of the day.
All right. So on that particular note, Mr. Tembo, thank you so much for coming in. Of course, just to ride on your points there, Mr. Hichilema, Hakainde Hichilema, the President of the Republic, did mention that we should look forward to a week full of appointments this week. So fingers are crossed. We hope that, of course, the job will be done in this particular week. Thank you for joining us. On that particular note, we come to the end of Crossfire. Join us again next week, Monday. Or rather, join me again next week, Monday, as, of course, I bring to you yet another interesting guest. And, of course, you get to call in with your comments and your contribution. And, of course, keep watching Spring TV. Good evening and stay blessed.